Donald Trump has once again been found in contempt for violating the gag order in his criminal hush money trial. The judge issued that ruling as court got underway in Manhattan within the last hour. Trump has already been fined $9,000 for 9 previous violations of the order. In his ruling today, Judge Juan Merchan threatened to jail the former president if the violations continue. Trump is on trial for allegedly falsifying business records to cover up a hush money payment made to adult film star Stormy Daniels in the lead up to the 2016 election. Trump has denied the allegations.
Well, welcome back to Public Media Affairs. Okay, so listen, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now. Put down your phone. Actually, no, don't put down your phone if that's how you're watching this, but you know what I mean. Focus up, because what I'm about to tell you is something that I honestly never thought I would say on this channel. A federal judge has basically told Donald Trump, the sitting president of the United States, that if he keeps doing what he's doing, the next step is jail. Not a fine, not a slap on the wrist, not a sternly worded letter, jail. A judge looked at the most powerful man on the planet and said, "You keep pushing me, and I will put you in a cell." And Trump, the guy who has spent his entire career acting like the rules don't apply to him, the guy who has survived 2 impeachments and 4 criminal indictments and 100 scandals that would have ended any other politician's career 10 times over, that guy is now reportedly scared. Not publicly scared, obviously. Publicly, he's still doing the whole tough guy routine. But behind closed doors, his lawyers are telling him in plain English that he is running out of road, that the judges are done warning, that the next violation, the next gag order he breaks, the next court directive he ignores, the next time he goes after a witness or a judge on social media could trigger an immediate contempt hearing that ends with U.S. Marshals walking into wherever he is and putting handcuffs on the President of the United States.
Courts have moved to the center of the country's most significant political fights, while the Trump administration has increasingly challenged the authority of judges whose rulings have stalled key parts of its agenda. As we mark a year into President Trump's second term, we're returning this week to guests from our On Democracy series, which explores the laws, institutions, and norms that have shaped this country and the different pressures they face today.
This is where we are. This is February 2026, and this is the reality of Donald Trump's second term. But let me just set the stage here, because I think a lot of people don't fully understand how we got to this point. Trump has been in office for just over a year now in his second term. And in that time, he has gotten into more fights with the federal judiciary than any president in modern history. And I don't mean policy disagreements. Every president has those. I mean actual, direct, personal confrontations with individual judges. He's attacked them by name. He's questioned their legitimacy.
But we did a great job over in China, and we did a great job in turning off wars. We stopped 8 wars. And we have 1 to go, as you probably know, and that'll get stopped also. But we've done a great job, so it's really been an honor to do it, and I did it with many of the people in this room. Every one of you I know, and every one of you I like. I like everybody.
He's called them enemies of the state. He's implied that judges who rule against him are corrupt or compromised or working for the other side. And for a while, the judges kind of just took it. They issued their rulings, they wrote their opinions, and they mostly tried to stay above the fray. But that changed. Something shifted in the last few months, and the judiciary, the supposedly calm, measured, above it all, third branch of government, has finally had enough. And the way they're showing it is by putting language into their orders that basically says, "Try me." Federal judges in multiple cases, we're talking immigration cases, executive order challenges, funding disputes, all of it, have started writing orders that explicitly spell out what happens if Trump or his administration ignores them.
The Constitution is much more important than jail. It's not even close. I'll do that sacrifice any day.
Jail for former President Trump? The judge in his hush money criminal trial says it's a possibility. Trump was held in contempt for a 10th time on Monday, this time for publicly criticizing the jury. The judge says the fines against him for violating a gag order just aren't working. The judge warns the court will have to consider a jail sentence moving.
And the answer isn't another hearing. The answer isn't another brief. The answer is contempt. And contempt means fines, sanctions, and yes, jail. That word is literally in the court documents now. Jail, written by federal judges, directed at the executive branch of the United States government. And look, I want to be very clear about something because I know how this stuff gets twisted on social media. No judge has signed an arrest warrant for Donald Trump. Nobody is raiding the White House tonight. That's not what's happening. What is happening is something that, in some ways, is even more significant. Judges are creating a legal framework in writing, on the record, in official court orders that gives them the authority to move fast if Trump crosses the line again. They're basically preloading the gun. They're saying, I'm not going to give you another warning. I'm not going to schedule a hearing for 3 weeks from now if you violate this order. I have already laid out the consequences in this document, and those consequences include immediate detention. That's what the instant order thing is about. It's not that a judge can snap their fingers and have Trump arrested out of nowhere. It's that judges have now structured their orders so that the process between violation and consequence is as short as legally possible. They've closed off the escape routes. They've eliminated the delays. They've basically told Trump's legal team, your client gets one more chance and then we're not asking anymore. And if you're Trump, if you're sitting in the White House reading those court orders with your lawyers, that has to be terrifying because Trump's entire legal strategy for his entire life has been delay, 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 appeal, everything. Drag it out, run the clock, make it so expensive and exhausting for the other side that they just give up. That's how he's operated in business, in politics, in every courtroom he's ever been in. And these judges are saying, no, not this time. This time the clock runs out fast. And when it runs out, you don't get a do-over. You get a jail cell. Are you kidding me? The President of the United States is one bad social media post away from a contempt hearing that could end with him in custody. That is where we are right now in America. And people are still arguing about whether we should be worried. Come on. All right. So let me take you through the full picture here because this story has layers and I want to make sure you understand all of them because the media is doing that thing again where they cover each court case like it's a separate little story, a little segment here about the immigration ruling, a little segment there about the gag order stuff, a little panel discussion about executive overreach, and they never connect the dots. So let me connect the dots for you. This pattern, judges threatening Trump with jail, is not happening in just one case. It's happening across multiple cases in multiple courts involving multiple judges, some of whom were appointed by Republicans. That's the part that should really make you pay attention. This isn't some Obama-appointed activist judge in San Francisco going rogue. This is a broad systemic judicial response to a president who keeps treating court orders like suggestions. Let me walk you through how we got here. Go all the way back to Trump's New York hush money case. Remember that the judge in that case held Trump in criminal contempt for violating a gag order by going after witnesses on social media. And at the time, the judge said something that I think a lot of people didn't take seriously enough. He told Trump directly in open court that continued violations could result in incarceration. He literally used the word prison. And what did Trump do? He pushed the line a little further and then a little further and then a little further because that's what Trump does. He tests boundaries the way a toddler tests boundaries. He pushes until someone actually stops him. And if nobody stops him, he pushes harder. And for a long time, nobody stopped him. Judges warned him. Judges fined him. Judges wrote strongly worded opinions about him. But nobody actually pulled the trigger. Nobody actually said, okay, that's it. You're going to jail. And Trump took that as proof that they never would. But here's where it gets interesting. Here's where the dynamic shifted, because Trump is now president again. And as president, he's not just a defendant in a criminal case anymore. He's the head of the executive branch. He controls the Justice Department. He controls ICE. He controls federal agencies. And he's been using that power in ways that have brought him into direct conflict with the courts on a scale that makes the gag order stuff look like a parking ticket. We're talking about immigration raids that judges specifically ordered to stop, and the administration did them anyway. We're talking about funding cuts to public health programs that judges blocked, and the administration tried to implement them anyway. We're talking about executive orders that judges declared unconstitutional, and the administration acted like the rulings didn't exist. One federal judge recently had to issue an order specifically requiring the Trump administration to facilitate the return of students who had been deported in violation of a previous court order. Think about that. The government deported people that a court had said could not be deported, and then a judge had to order them to bring those people back. That's not a policy disagreement. That's defiance. That's a sitting president telling the judiciary, your orders don't apply to me. And that's why judges started putting jail language into their orders, because they realized that the normal enforcement mechanisms, fines, sanctions, strongly worded opinions weren't working. Trump and his administration were treating judicial orders like speed bumps, not stop signs. So judges did the only thing they had left. They escalated. They started writing orders that say in plain legal language that the next violation will result in contempt proceedings that could include detention. Not could include a hearing about detention, could include actual physical, put you in a room, you can't leave detention, and they structured those orders specifically to be fast. No more 3-week delays, no more endless briefing schedules, no more procedural games that let Trump's lawyers run the clock. These orders are designed to move from violation to consequence in days, not months. Now, let me talk about how Trump's team is handling this, because honestly, it's kind of fascinating in a train wreck sort of way. Publicly, the White House line is that these judges are overstepping their authority. They're saying the judiciary doesn't have the power to tell the president how to run the executive branch. They're calling it judicial activism. They're calling it an attack on democracy. They're saying unelected judges are trying to override the will of the voters who put Trump in office. And look, there's actually a legitimate constitutional debate buried in there somewhere. The question of how much power federal judges have to control executive branch actions is genuinely complicated, and scholars disagree about it. But the way Trump is framing it as this simple good versus evil story where heroic Trump is being persecuted by evil judges, that's not a legal argument. That's a political narrative designed to keep his base angry and motivated. Behind the scenes, though, and this is the part his supporters don't want to hear, Trump's lawyers are reportedly freaking out because they know something that Trump either doesn't understand or refuses to accept. They know that contempt of court is one of the few areas where a judge has almost unlimited power. A judge can find you in contempt and impose penalties, including jail, without a jury trial, without the normal protections you'd get in a criminal case. It's one of the most powerful tools in the entire legal system, and it exists specifically for situations where someone is defying the court's authority. And right now, multiple federal judges are openly waving that tool around and saying, don't make me use this. And here's the thing that really gets me, the thing that I think a lot of people on both sides are missing. This fight isn't just about Trump. This fight is about whether the judiciary can actually enforce its orders against a president who doesn't want to comply. Because if the answer is no, if Trump can just ignore court orders and judges can threaten jail but never actually follow through, then what's the point of having courts at all? What's the point of having a constitution that says the judiciary is a co-equal branch of government if a president can just laugh at their rulings and face zero consequences? On the other hand, if a judge actually does hold a sitting president in contempt, if they actually ordered Trump detained, even for an hour, the political fallout would be unlike anything this country has ever seen. Trump's supporters would call it a coup. There would be protests, maybe worse. The constitutional crisis that everyone keeps warning about would stop being theoretical and start being very, very real. So the judges are stuck. They've made threats they might not be able to follow through on, and Trump knows it. He's calling their bluff. He's betting that at the end of the day, no judge is going to have the guts to actually put a sitting president behind bars. And honestly, he might be right, but he also might be wrong. And that uncertainty, that genuine not knowing whether a federal judge is actually going to pull the trigger, is what makes this moment so dangerous and so unprecedented. Let me also talk about the polling on this, because the numbers are really telling. When you ask Americans whether they think Trump should follow court orders, the answer is overwhelming. Yes. Like massive majorities across parties, say the president should obey the courts. But when you ask whether judges should be able to jail a president for contempt, the numbers split hard along party lines. Democrats overwhelmingly say yes. Republicans overwhelmingly say no. And independents, the voters who decide elections, are genuinely torn. They want the president to follow the rules, but they're uncomfortable with the idea of a judge locking up the leader of the free world. And that split, that tension between wanting accountability and fearing the chaos that accountability might cause, is basically the story of Trump's entire presidency in one polling question. All right, so let's get into what this actually means going forward, because this is where things get really serious. And I don't mean politically serious, I mean structurally serious for the country, because what we're watching right now is a slow motion collision between two fundamental principles of American government, and there's no clean way out of it. On one side, you have the principle that nobody is above the law, not the president, not anyone. The courts exist to check executive power, and when a judge issues an order, it has to be followed. That's the foundation. That's the bedrock. Without that, you don't have a republic. You have a monarchy with extra steps. On the other side, you have the practical reality that enforcing the law against a sitting president is almost impossible. The president controls the Justice Department. The president controls federal law enforcement. The president commands the military. If a judge says, arrest the president, who exactly carries out that order? U.S. Marshals. They work for the Justice Department, which works for the president. It's a circle that doesn't close. And both sides, both Trump and the judges know this. The judges know they're making threats they might not be able to enforce. And Trump knows that his position gives him a kind of practical immunity that no court order can fully overcome. But here's what could change that calculation. And this is the scenario that I think Trump's legal team is genuinely losing sleep over. What if a state judge, not a federal judge, a state judge is the one who pulls the trigger? Because state judges don't answer to the federal government. State law enforcement doesn't work for the president. If a state court holds Trump in contempt, say in the New York case that's still technically pending, the enforcement mechanism is completely outside of Trump's control. The state police, the state correction system, none of it runs through the White House. And that little crack in the armor is what makes the instant order threat real in a way that federal threats might not be. It's the one scenario where Trump can't just ignore the order and dare someone to enforce it because someone who enforces it doesn't work for him. Now, let's talk about what this means for the midterms, because everything, and I mean everything, comes back to November. If you've been watching this channel, you already know that Trump has framed the 2026 midterms as a survival election. He's told his supporters that if Democrats take Congress, they'll impeach him and now add this judicial threat on top of it. If Democrats win the House and start impeachment proceedings, and simultaneously judges are moving toward contempt proceedings with real teeth, Trump would be fighting a two-front war against both Congress and the courts at the same time. That's never happened before. No president in American history has faced simultaneous removal proceedings from the legislature and detention threats from the judiciary. And the combined pressure from both of those fronts could create the kind of crisis that even Trump can't bluster his way out of. Here's what I think is going to happen, and I want to be honest with you. This is my read on the situation. Take it for what it's worth. I think the judges are going to keep escalating. I think every time Trump or his administration violates a court order, the judicial response is going to get harsher, faster, and more explicit. I think we're going to see more orders with jail language. I think we're going to see more contempt threats, and I think eventually, maybe not this month, maybe not next month, but eventually a judge is going to actually follow through. Not with a dramatic made-for-TV arrest, not with handcuffs on the White House lawn, but with a quiet contempt finding that carries real penalties, maybe a fine so large it can't be ignored, maybe a detention order for a government official who carried out an illegal directive, maybe something we can't even predict right now. And when that happens, the constitutional question that everyone has been dancing around for years, can the legal system actually hold a president accountable in real time? Not after he leaves office, but while he's still in power. That question is going to demand an answer. And nobody, not Trump, not the judges, not Congress, not the Supreme Court. Nobody is ready for that answer because no matter which way it goes, it changes everything. Think about it like this. If the courts back down, if judges keep threatening but never follow through, then the precedent is set. Future presidents will know that court orders are optional, that the judiciary is a paper tiger, that if you're powerful enough and bold enough, you can just say no and get away with it. And that's terrifying regardless of your politics, because eventually there will be a president you disagree with using that exact same playbook. But if the courts follow through, if a judge actually imposes real consequences on a sitting president, then we're in completely uncharted water. We're in a place where the norms and traditions that have held this country together for 250 years are being replaced by raw legal force. And nobody knows what that looks like. Nobody knows how Trump responds. Nobody knows how his supporters respond. Nobody knows how the country responds. All we know is that right now in February of 2026, the distance between the president of the United States and jail is shorter than it has ever been in American history. And it's getting shorter every single day. All right, that's going to do it for today. Smash that subscribe button, drop a like, and I'll see you in the next